Hi, this is Bernie, your Uber elder here in Redwood City at a Chevron gas station, watching the cars come in and get refueled. Much the same as we have to have food as individuals to move our muscles, to move about. We need to put fuel into our cars to keep them moving around and give us that mobility. So we have now outsourced our mobility in order to go faster, further. We think it's essential these days, and our lives now revolve around car distances, if not longer distances. At least with all of the things we do in our lives, we resort to the car, and I'm a big part of that as an Uber driver. And we've got to keep it going, but we tend to not see the damage being done. Every time we fill up here, we're taking on something that has done damage along the way just getting here. The tanker trucks that deliver the fuel here, they've been burning fossil fuel, putting it into the atmosphere. The construction of those tanker trucks, of course, took a lot of energy and caused damage to the environment in their mining, manufacturing, and process. And of course, they're coming from a refinery. In this case, the Chevron refinery in Richmond is the likely source. Richmond refinery does lots of damage, as evidenced by property values being lower there. They sometimes have flare-ups and releases of gases and toxics into the atmosphere that send people to the hospitals. And so clearly poorer people have to bear that cost to our mobility here in the more affluent parts of the Bay Area. And then the refinery, of course, it's not just the reprocessing of the crude oil into gasoline and all of the petrochemicals, like the plastics, like the fertilizers, the pesticides, the ortho line, and other aspects of the crude oil that are happening at the refinery. But you'd notice there's an administrative building, and of course there's a big overhead to running the refinery, running the corporation, all those people driving to and from work. It's all a part of the supply chain. And then the oil, having gotten delivered to the refinery, came either by a big tanker on the oceans coming into Port of Richmond and through pipelines taking it to the refinery, or it's coming in by rail on tanker cars, or it's coming in by pipeline. And we know each of these have caused damage along the way. And then there is, of course, the pumping of that crude oil out of the ground, whether it be on solid ground or offshore from wells that are below the water. A huge amount of energy is expended to get the fossil fuel energy, and that energy it took to get it, the return on it is getting less and less, but it's all fossil fuel based, and it's doing damage along the way. We clearly know what the spills do when an offshore refinery or a tanker truck spills the crude oil, but there is the regular damage that even when there are no accidents, just the atmospheric CO2 we're recognizing is a problem. And then we like to blame the oil industry. We say those companies knew that 20 years ago that the CO2 from the burning of their product was causing climate change, and they kept it from us. Like somehow that would have made all the difference. Like 20 years ago, we would have fixed it all. Well, it's total nonsense. But what we're doing is we're not only outsourcing the energy source, the energy supplying that used to be fuel for our muscles to walk and bicycle and maybe harness the horse and take it to town, but we've outsourced now the responsibility. And so we don't feel that we're contributing that directly to the problems of the planet, to the environmental degradation that's happening. And of course, if we go to an electric car, then we don't have to visit these stations at all, and of course we're free from all of that. Well, of course we're not, and I'll do more programs on that, but I already did one on Tesla Proud, because the embodied energy in the car itself, in the batteries, not to mention the fossil fuels that are involved in the process, the machinery of creating the quote unquote renewable energy that are charging those batteries. It's all a fraud. And the big point here is that we not only outsource the primary product, but we as consumers, we as employees continue to consume it and contribute to the supply chains that are a part of our life in so many ways. I mean, it's a huge matrix, given that like even Chevron uses a lot of fossil fuel to bring us the fossil fuels that we use in all the businesses that are contributing to the problem. So it's a highly complex web, but we're all a part of it. But the outsourcing of responsibility, I'm not buying it. And I'm trying to shed the illusion that many people hold that it's the oil industry that is at fault for destroying the predictability of stable climate and doing damage to the environment and all of it. And I'd say those executives at the Chevron company or any other oil company are not any more responsible than any of us who are sharing in that process. That we've outsourced the acquisition of the energy to have our mobility, and it's the fact that we have the mobility that is the problem. If we lived a much simpler, more local lifestyle where our mobility was constrained by what human scale can do or animals can assist us with, we wouldn't be damaging the planet. But because we can go 65 miles in an hour, we can go long distances with trucks and cars, that's where the problem lies. We're all culpable.